you. Thanks for tuning into the Waiting List podcast. I'm Long Long.
I'm Daniel.
And I'm Jacqueline. And we are three watch friends with a healthy obsession for watches.
So sit back and relax with us while we chat with collectors, industry giants, and share some good vibes. Welcome, guys. Today, we are very fortunate to have the CEO of the independent brand Arminstrom on today, Serge Michel. Welcome, and thanks for agreeing to come onto the show, Serge.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's a big pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
By the way, is this the first ever podcast Arminstrom or you have ever done?
No, we actually have done a couple of podcasts, but mainly with retailers. We have a couple of retailers. They do regular podcasts, mainly in the USA. So it's not the first one I'm doing.
Well, I don't want to be big-headed, but it's just not gonna match ours. I'm sorry. Yeah, if you haven't heard of the Waiting List podcast by now, come on. Anyway, you've just come back from Dubai Watch Week. How was that for you?
Dubai Watch Week, to be honest, was absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
First of all, it's just great to be able to travel again. I mean, it also for us has been, I think, about 2 years not being in any of other places outside of Switzerland. So being in Dubai and meet with collectors, meet with the watch industry again was just great, and also the mood at the show was just good. So it was a big pleasure to be in there. Yes.
Can I ask, what the format of Dubai Watch Week is actually like, and actually for a brand like yours, what is the benefit of a Dubai Watch Week?
Well, there's several. I think Dubai Watch Week is run by Siddiqui, which is probably the biggest retailer in the region. And what they do, they invite a lot of journalists from around the world. So we have the chance to meet with journalists, to talk with journalists. And then also, of course, they invite all their collectors. So we also get the chance to talk to our collectors. And as I just said before, it's also a get-together of the industry. So to talk to the other brands, again, I think there's several good things being there at the Dubai Watch Week, yes.
Okay, so, I think you guys must have attended Basel World when it was still active. But Basel World, hasn't really was never historically a place where collectors would used to go down. It was mainly a trade fair, like B2B. So was that simply just a business thing for you? And was it still relevant for you? Could you see why Basel World didn't quite work and why Dubai Watch Week does work?
Yes, I think when we see now what's happening in Geneva with Watches and Wonders, and we just recently had the Geneva Watches Day, which is actually with the pendant of Basel World, and it seems that they work. I think Basel World, I actually do miss it. It was always a good opportunity being there, but they did several things wrong. I think we have to face it. The organization of Basel World. So we already decided, I think in 2017, we had the opportunity to go to SCHH back then, but it was a pure trade show as well. So I still believe that trade shows have a reason to be there, just simply to meet with retailers worldwide, to exchange again with the industry, and meet all the journalists. Okay. Even though they're opening also to collectors, but honestly, it's in Switzerland, so there's not many people. We have a few collectors from Switzerland. They join the show, but it's a B2B show. Yeah.
But so basically, what you're saying is that it's a great place that you could do your sales at. But for a brand like Armin Strom, where a lot of your production is actually, it's a very low production of pieces you do, how would you say, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask, but how much of your business is actually done to direct to the end consumer, and how much do you rely on retailers?
Yeah, we're still a brand. Arminstrom is still a brand which is growing. So we do both. Of course, we're focusing on our collectors. At the end, what we learned today, we are actually the brand, not only Arminstrom. I think all the independents, they are selling the watch to the collectors. We do need retailers as a sort of window worldwide. So there's still people they want to see. I think it's all about the touch and feel. We saw the last couple of years with all the Zoom meetings. You can do Zoom meetings, but to really talk together and to have a watch in the hand, I think it's a different story. And this is the reason why we still prefer to work with retailers. So we're building up still our retail network worldwide. We're focusing on important places for Arminstrom, but for the collector to go on a place to actually put the watch on the wrist, I think it's very important. Yeah.
So mainly a retailer, would you say geographically, it still has the value of having manpower to present your brand in the right way, plus the fact that they have the database of collectors? Is that the main advantage of a retailer?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I think database of collectors not so much anymore, because I think the brand Arminstrom we grow it the last couple of years, and I think we are known. I think the people are finding us today. But yes, it's definitely a place to go to explore the brand and yeah.
Okay, so I just want to understand, because I think the retail space is like changing quite significantly, especially the way things are getting more digital. Arminstrom pieces, they're not like how can I say this? They're not the cheapest pieces to own or to go for. So when you work with retailers, are you mainly working more now on a consignment model, or is it still straight up buy-in? Because independents are quite a risk, for retailers sometimes, because there's such a high value and it's a lot of money to pump down, right?
It was. I think actually when we started with the brands many years ago, a couple of years ago, we had to start in consignment, of course. So we were happy to find a place who said, yes, let's list and let's put the brand in the window and see what's happening. But we completely changed it. So we're not working in consignment base anymore. Usually at the moment, most of the pieces are actually sold through at the moment, especially what happened in the last couple of months. The orders are doubling. I don't know what's happening at the moment within the independent industry, but it's almost crazy, the requests and demand we have for the last couple of months. So most of the pieces are more or less sold through, but still, I think it's important for the retailer to have a piece in stock to show it, not necessarily to sell directly, but that they can say, let's come to the place XY, put it on the wrist, and if you want it, I order it for you, and it takes 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, whatever the model is.
Long.
My question is actually, because having stayed in Singapore and then moved to Hong Kong, I can see that the way the retailers sell, like the method they use is very different, right? So do you care about how the watches are presented and sold, or do you care more about who the watches eventually reach? Like, who's your customer base? Or do you care about the whole experience from how it's sold, how it's marketed?
I think it's, for me, almost the most important that the retailer really takes care and has the knowledge about the brand. If somebody comes to a retail store who most probably had been in touch with either directly the brand or at least a website, has a couple of information and listen to podcasts about Arminstrom or whatever. So he goes to a shop, and there he needs to have the same experience. This has been very difficult lately because of usually of course we have our distributors, we have a sales team. It's myself and my team who are traveling and do regular trainings with the sales people, with the retailers. But lately it has been difficult, of course, yes. But I think it's an important part that the brand is displayed as we want to have it displayed, yes.
Okay.
Was there a reason, Long, behind that question? Because it sounds like one of those questions you ask because out of your own experience or something.
No, because I'm thinking a lot about, I think it's similar to what you're thinking, like the retail space is changing. You see a lot of brands being recognized more recently. I would, like, from the top of my head, I would think like Moser is finally getting some kind of recognition. I mean, even Lange, finally the prices are going up a bit. So then my thought has always been, as a brand, do you worry more about where your product ends up? Like, who are the people wearing your watches? Or do you care more about who, like, okay, let's just use, in Hong Kong, there's a AD called Oriental, right? When you go into Oriental on the first floor, you have Rolex, you have Tudor, you have the more, I guess, like the more recognized brands. Then you go to the second floor, and then you have Moser, you have Seiko. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's smaller brands per se, but brands that people in Hong Kong,
Niche.
yeah, niche brands, right? So then I will think, okay, if I was, let's just say, yeah, let's say I was Armin Strom and I was thinking about entering, do I care whether my booth is next to Grand Seiko and Moser, or do I only care about who on the streets, like who are my end customers wearing my product? But,
I think it's a mix. I think the who is going to wear the brand, I think it's something we cannot control, because there's at least two kinds of collectors. They're the hardcore collectors. They read, they understand the brand, and for them, I think it's very important where the brand is. Is it next to also a like-minded niche brand? But a big portion of our watch collectors, they are collectors, yes, but they don't have the full understanding about what exactly we're doing. It's more about the look of the watch. It's just, yes, let's buy another watch. And they just need to have it available somewhere.
Okay.
Serge, you mentioned that, there's been a huge demand, huge surge in the interest of independent brands, and, Arminstrom is reaping the benefits of that. What is the production number of Arminstrom per year, roughly?
We had, we were just reaching last year 400 pieces, and with the new called System 78 collection, which is our more accessible range, we're going to do most probably about 500 plus watches next year.
Okay, so as a brand where you see all this surge, and you're still a small outfit, right? Like you have a demand. How challenging is it to fulfill this extra demand, but also maintaining that your growth is in a safe projection, that you're not overcommitting?
Yeah, it's most challenging at the moment, really, to keep our quality standards within the production and within the facility we have. Just we were looking for 2 more watchmakers. One of them just started today or yesterday, on December 1st. It is difficult, yes, to go from where we have been to with a longer outlook to coming orders in by daily basis, and somehow we have to fulfill it. And the whole, even though we are extremely independent, we still are depending on some suppliers, and also the supply chain. It's at the moment it's incredible. We wait for cases, for example. We are not doing our own cases, so there's a Swiss company doing it for us. So we wait for cases for 6-7 months now. Before it was 2 months, 3 months maybe maximum. Yeah. Okay. It's challenging. Yes.
I was recently reading a book by Kari Voutilainen. It's about Kari Voutilainen, and it was talking about how he doesn't want to get to a place where like he believes that the production number, once you get past a certain amount, you cannot maintain the uniqueness of a independent brand. You can't actually maintain the USP because you actually have to become more industrialized, something which a lot of the larger conglomerate brands actually, specialize in. What number do you think that is, an independent, where once you start getting close to it, you will start losing part of what makes Arminstrom special?
I think we're still far away from it with 400, 500, 600 watches. I mean, when we look at let's take Rolex. They're still considered as a very exclusive brand because there's so many people want to get a Rolex and there's not enough production. So I think Arminstrom, we're still very far away from not being exclusive anymore when we produce 1,000 watches a year. I think it's still a small number for the collectors out there, especially now with our entry-level segment, where we reach much more potential collectors. I think it's still I think it's not an issue we're going to face within the next years.
Well, let's hope it is. As I was digging up more material in preparation for this interview, it did actually have me wondering, how did you personally end up within the watch industry?
Yeah, it's actually a story. It's a funny story. I was definitely not born into a watchmaker's family, but I grew up in the same town as Mr. Armin Strom used to work and live. And my dad actually bought one of his timepieces, and I remember I was maybe 6, 7, 8 years old when I was looking over his shoulder from Armin Strom, and he was skeletonizing the watch from my father. And Mr. Armin Strom, he was the specialist in skeleton watches. So I was already as a child in a basement actually from the store, and in the upper floor he had the store where he was selling. Actually, his wife was selling the watches of Omega, Zenith, and different brands. And he, as a master watchmaker, started suddenly to do his own brand. And as growing up in the same town, I really had the big chance to meet him personally. This is how I got into the passion for watchmaking. Yeah, it was, of course, much later when I also decided to work within the watch industry.
Yeah, so please continue that story. How did that, as a child experience, then lead you to the path into Arminstrom?
I took it step by step. Of course, I didn't have the budget to buy expensive watches, so I started as one of the Swatch collectors. I was one of the first member of the Swatch collector club.
There's nothing wrong with that. I have one.
It's
too cheap for long one, but for people like me who are street, yeah, I can rock it.
No, and then there were these auctions in Lucerne and Zurich, so we went to the auctions and bought the watch and sold the watch, and there was every year there was this big catalog. You go through, do I have one in the catalog? What's the value of it? So it was kind of fun trading, and it was a big marketing aspect. And maybe that's why my career actually is in marketing. So I did a couple of marketing studies, and then the opportunity came to actually take over Arminstrom as a brand. Mr. Arminstrom was still active in Burgdorf. It was the town I grew up. And he had his workshop, just him and 2 watchmakers. And because of his age, he was actually looking for a successor, and he talked to my dad. They were friends. So we had dinner together and said, yeah, why not? Actually, why? It would be sad seeing the brand disappear. So we invested, took over the shares, still with Mr. Armin Storm, of course, in the head of the company. And then I really got passionate about it and saw the opportunities that actually from a small, very, very small niche brand, Armin Storm was only doing unique pieces back then, to try to grow the brand. And actually, this is when I decided to move from the advertisement agency to full-time into the watch business, to Arminstrom, together with Arminstrom, and started the adventure.
So what was the kind of like production at that time? What was Arminstrom really doing? You kind of mentioned it on Skeletonization, and he was starting his own brand. But what did you want to, where did you see the vision of Arminstrom as yourself, as developing? And to be honest, like, has it changed? Has it changed as you've moved?
Yeah. So he did 10 to maybe 20 pieces a year. And then he had, in the 90s, he was actually approached by Omega to do all the skeleton watches for Omega for certain models. And this is when he did larger numbers for Omega. So he was actually the specialist for skeleton watches, and so Omega called Arminstrom to do all the skeleton watches. So but then it was in 2007 when he decided to take it over, and we wanted to grow the brand, of course. So we moved. The first step was moving to Biel. I called Claude, childhood friend who is trained as a watchmaker and who is trained as a designer constructor in the watch industry. He was working for some companies before Arminstrom. he was immediately excited about the idea. Also, he knew Arminstrom when he was a child. His parents, they had a store just opposite of Arminstrom. So he joined me, and together we said we need to move to Biel because in Burgdorf there's no employees, there's no watchmakers, there's no supplying industry. So we moved to Biel and invested in our first caliber. Actually, Claude was working on the caliber, first caliber. We invested in all the machinery, CNC machines, hired watchmakers, well-trained watchmakers. And in 2010, we presented our first Armin Strom watch with a fully in-house movement.
Do you guys still do skeletonization for other brands?
No. Actually, we stopped. For me, the DNA of the brand is still the open work, also for Armin Strom. So it's not skeleton watches because now we have the machine. And to be honest, to produce a main plate, for example, on a machine, and then skeletonizing it somehow it's changed a bit. We have the machine, so we can already produce it as a skeletonized part, and then just hand beveling it and then decorate it to a highest level, of course.
Yeah.
I have kind of like a dumb question, but what is the criteria to tell that an open worked piece is actually like well made, aside from just aesthetically, it's easy on the eyes, it's well balanced, and you can see the movement.
Yeah, good question.
How do you actually tell?
Well, for us, it's really the time you spend in the decoration, the finishing of each and every part. So at Arminstrom, we always talk about the 360 degrees decoration. So we do hand decorate the parts from the top around, so from the sides, beveling the sides, even the back side of each movement part is hand decorated. So this is and with a loop or even with your eye, you can tell the difference if it's machine finished or if it's hand finished. I think that's definitely a big difference in it. Yeah.
I'd just like to touch it on skeletonization again, because maybe some listeners maybe don't know there's a difference. But can you explain what is the difference in skeletonization and open worked?
Exactly
Or
what
is it the same for you?
Yeah.
I think the skeleton. So when we talked about skeleton watches at Arminstrom, it's a hand skeletonized watch. So Mr. Armin Storm, he took like a finished watch movement, completely disassembled it, skeletonized it. So he cut out material with a little saw and files and engraved it and put the movement together again. And open work today for us, we produce the parts on our machine, each and every part, and then we put the movement together. Of course, the hand finishing and all this would happen too. So it's
So would it be fair to say the understanding is right from the start in the fact that skeletonization is working on a movement that wasn't previously designed for it, but you then start hollowing it out. But open worked is the main plate, everything was designed to be minimalistic in that kind of look right from the start. Is that a good understanding of it?
Yeah. And I think skeletonization is actually it's only a part of a hand. It's one art of hand decorating a movement. So there's engraving, there's hand skeletonization, there is beveling, there is
So go long, ladies first.
Another question. So a lot of people study watchmaking, right? So let's just say it's the equivalent of like going to university, and then you study a bit of everything. You try skeletonization, you try enameling, and then you do different parts. And then do you then specialize into one segment? Is that how it works? Or everyone's doing the same? Yeah. Okay.
No, I think even skeletonization is not trained in watchmaking schools anymore. So we had to train back then. Arminstrom was doing the training internally at Arminstrom for watchmakers.
Oh, that's
it's not something they learn in watchmaking school anymore. But you can like we have two engravers, for example. They learned in Glashütte as a watchmaker, and then they did an extra study to being an engraver. And as you just said, long there's also enamel as a craftsmanship. There's different professions, but these are all extra trainings. So the base, I think the base is a watchmaker where they learn assembling, disassembling, simple decoration, and then they start to be specialized in wherever they have the passion for it. Yeah.
Okay. And like for people, because I think a lot of people still haven't touched and seen an Armin Strom like close up, right? So out of the more like I would say mass market brands, or the the mass market brands sounds so bad.
You're talking AP.
Yeah, actually I'm thinking AP. Exactly.
Yeah. Mass market AP, is that what you're saying? You just
so
pissed off a lot of people.
I know, but because what I want to say is, like I would say right now, the most commonly known open worked, right, is an AP open worked, right? So what is another brand where you think they've like done a good job with doing an open worked piece or a skeletonization piece?
I think it's not something where you really can differ as a brand to say you're doing an open worked watch. There's so many watches there. They are open work where they put really the movement in the center. I think when you are a manufacturer, you do your parts from the design to the production, decoration, to the assembling. So you can already start your thinking of designing the movement to look nice. Okay. So it's not only our watch is not only an Arminstrom watch is not only made to work good or to run accurate or to have a certain complication. We design them. The movement is designed to look aesthetically right. And I think there's a couple of brands, they have the same philosophy as well. Yeah. So it's a different if you just go and buy a movement and then you have to decorate it and make it look nice. I think it's different. So you can't be unique in that way. But if you do your design studies from A to C to the finished watch, then I think you can be different.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But hearing what you say, yeah, like in my mind, I've always thought open work is better than skeletonization. But then, you let's say you design it on the computer and then it comes out. And then, yeah, I know you have to do the hand finishing anyway. But to get a current movement, to actually cut it out and hollow it out, surely that's actually more work. And then you still have to do the hand finishing on top. So is my understanding that skeletonization is more of an artisanship rather than something like an open work, which, for want of a better phrase, is CNC made, right? Through a machine mostly, and then hand finished.
Yeah, but the part when you do a skeleton watch, the movement is also CNC made, and then you just get the part.
Oh, okay. You just killed it. Okay.
You get a.
Okay. Right. Okay. Anyway, moving on. I want to ask. It seems a travesty not to actually talk about the man himself, Mr. Armin Strom. Can you describe what he was like, and what it was like to work with, and yeah,
he was a very gentle. In Switzerland, in French, we call it the consigneur. So he was really the watchmaker, and he's actually still alive. He's 84 years old, and but not actively working. But he still has his watchmaking place in his apartment where he lives. So he still works on watches and does some skeleton watches, but more for pleasure. So he was more a quiet person. He was an artist. He was definitely an artist. So he never, for example, did any track records of the watches he sold. So he did the watch, he sold it, and he started doing another watch. So we have no idea today where all the watches went from Arminstrom. Once in a while, we get the phone call, "Oh, I have a watch from Arminstrom. You want to buy it back?" We always say, "Yes, please bring them." So we work on our museum pieces. But he was really, so he went in the morning when he came, he also moved with us to Biel. So when he drove to Biel, he went to the atelier and more or less closed the door, and he was working for 8 hours. He always ate the same sandwich for every lunch, and then he went back home to his wife.
Which sandwich did he eat though?
Ham and cheese, quite simple, nothing fancy.
I didn't want to say it, but since Long Long's brought up food, you know, when you were talking about specialization, I was thinking if Long Long was ever a watchmaker, you just find her in the canteen. Like you would just next to the coffee machine and the bagel machine, and that would be her job.
Hey, in the
I'm joining. That's good.
Like that.
And then she'd wear a t-shirt which said "Don't judge" or something.
First of all, it's not that weird. In the Paddock book, and they talk about like back in the days, you can smell cheese and people were eating.
Yeah,
right?
True.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, it's true. That is true, by the way. Like Long Long is saying, if you read the Paddock book, it does say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question about I have a question about Armin because from what I mean, I could be wrong about this, but he was a restorer, right? He started off restoring watches.
That's right. He also did watch restoring, servicing and restoration of watches. Yeah.
So for like restorers versus just watchmakers, is there a huge difference?
I think he just felt something to start the own brand. I mean, he knew he has the knowledge, he can make it, and he just wanted to make it happen. I mean, he is a trained watchmaker, so all the when you go to retailers, probably also in Hong Kong, Singapore, they all have trained watchmakers for make services and watches. They're all trained watchmakers. He just decided for himself as a personal feeling to make a watch with his name on the watch. I think that's quite a big step.
Yeah.
Suddenly have the passion to try it. So the first watch he made it, he put it in the window. He was probably waiting for more than a year till somebody came and bought the watch. It was only when he started to hand skeletonize a watch. So it was something different back then. And then when the success actually started to come.
Can I ask at the beginning, when he was making like 20 pieces and he was like skeletonizing them, what it was like to work and grow the brand in a different direction, where you have this watchmaker that has been spending many years doing the same thing, and you obviously want to grow the business away from personalized skeletonization pieces, and eventually we'll get onto what your other kind of selling points are. But how is it to work with someone like that, to go in a different direction?
For him or
for you? Yeah.
I mean, he was always 100% behind me. So he was very happy that, first of all, that we took the decision to take over the brand, so that he sees a future for the brand. And when we talked and I told him what actually the idea is of the future of Arminstrom, he was 100%. I got his back 100%. So it was good. He gave advice in terms of design, in terms of aesthetical look at the beginning. So he was fully involved at the first steps of the new Arminstrom.
Okay. We are going to now go on to like your brand identity, and we spent quite a bit talking about skeletonization, open worked, whichever term you want to use, like as being a, something that is not unique to Arminstrom, but something that you guys do. But, when I was researching, you guys do a lot about constant force stuff, right? Did you think that skeletonization alone was not a strong enough pull for a brand identity? So you wanted a mechanical aspect DNA to your brand?
I think it's about innovations. I think we really strongly believe at Arminstrom there's still innovations to be done in the world of watchmaking. That's why we, what you just mentioned, our mechanism of constant force, for example, is a unique way of displaying or using constant force in a watch. So we have the resonance clutch spring, which is also an innovation for our watch. So every watch it's actually a decision we made. Every watch we're going to launch needs to have some kind of innovation. Because to be different, I think you have to make something different. It's really what I think we need to do something different, and I think we want to make things different as well. It's a will we have.
Okay, Serge, I don't want to take liberties with the audience because could you try and explain what constant, I'm thinking this podcast, I'm just asking you to explain stuff, but what is constant force? I know what it is. I do actually know what it is, right? But for a lot of people, I'm not sure they do know what constant force is. Why is it important?
Yeah, at the end, what we do with all constant force, it's the result is to give constant power delivery to the balance. And if we achieve this, there is different ways of doing it through the chain, for example, or our mechanism. If you do so, if you are mastering to give constant power delivery to the balance, so you get a more accurate way, I think you could, with our system, quite an easy way to explain it, what's happening actually when the spring of every watch, when the spring is fully wound, a watch runs usually a bit too fast. And when the spring, which gives the power, it's almost out of power, a watch runs a bit too slow. It's a natural physics effect. So what we do with our mechanism, because it's an automatic watch, we just have a looser slip in the barrel. So the watch won't never fully wind. And we integrated a stop work mechanism directly into the barrel with a Geneva cross, which stops the barrel from completely unwinding. So it's preventing the barrel from completely unwinding. So we only work, I call it the comfort zone. We only work in a comfort zone of a very smooth power release of the barrel. So let's say if the barrel will provide 4 days of power reserve, we only use 3 days of power reserve.
Yeah, that was my next
question.
question.
3 days are very constant. Yeah.
So you sacrifice power reserve for accuracy, because the
Yes.
end result is accuracy, right?
The end result is accuracy. Yes, the end result is accuracy. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat that just in case people, and I'm sorry, audience, if you think I'm patronizing, but I just want to make sure that people get it, and I'm sure I get it as well. So when you wind the watch, you're winding the barrel, and when you're winding the barrel, you're actually winding a wire that is coiled very tightly, and that's why you feel it get tighter as you wind. And you're saying that when it's fully wound, so when your watch is fully wound, the watch actually runs faster, probably due to the tension on the wire, right, as it's slowly releasing. And then likewise, when you get to the end of the wire, the tension isn't so much, and therefore the watch or the clock tends to run slower. And therefore your parameters on the mainspring means that you're cutting out the extremes. So when you're not going fully wound and you're not getting fully loose. So that's how you deliver your constant force, right? Is that
yeah,
a good summary?
I'm sure you all know the I don't know the name, these cars, the matchbox cars. So you have to pull them and then release them.
Yeah.
So first they're quite fast.
Yeah.
And then they get slower and they stop.
Yeah.
And it's also it's a spring inside. So you wind them actually when you pull them back, you wind them. Yeah. You have the full power at the beginning, and then they get slower and slower and slower.
Yeah.
Until they stop.
And so then after the 10th time, you normally break them.
Earlier.
That's true. Normally after the 10th time, you think you're trying to make it faster and faster, and then you just break it. Right?
Yeah.
Can I ask something? Because I can see your following questions, right? But before we skip this part, I just have to get this in, because I think we went from Armin being very I would say like an artist, and then you taking over the brand, modernizing it, and having your own vision. But I'm always very fascinated by which brand ambassadors brands choose. And if I've been looking at the brand ambassadors that you guys have chosen, like you've done horse rider, like Tim Bergen, a chef, car racer, Dean Stoneman, what is the logic behind it? Like, what is the message you're trying to send?
there's no logic. I think these were all good friends who joined us on our journey of Armin Strom. We've all of them have a personal relationship, either myself or Claude, co-founder of Armin Strom. So we know them. And it was just at the beginning, when we really started with Armin Strom, we were looking for platforms to bring the brand out. So we looked in our close relationship, and we have relationship into the car industry. We have relationship into the horse scene. That probably how it came. Yeah, it was not a natural, not a logical or a strategical decision why to have this or that ambassador.
Okay. So you said you have relationships with the car industry, and I think I read somewhere, and I think it was one of Claude's interviews that but I'm not sure if it's been translated correctly, because I think the interview was done in French, I think. But basically, you're saying that nowadays, every single watch, when it's being delivered, it's kind of like when you customize a car. There are still things that customers can design. Is that true?
At Arminstrom?
Yeah.
Yes, still, we still do customization, yes, but we had a couple of years ago, we had this online tool, actually, even where people can come to our website and choose their preferred model, and then choose a dial collar, strap collar, even PVD coatings on the movement.
Okay.
But we came away of it because of just with all our production processes, it has been a bit of a headache.
Imagine.
But we still offering it. We're still offering it. So it's also a bit, maybe even the history of Mr Armin Storm doing only unique pieces and really sitting together with this collector and talk about the project, where to go with the watch. So we won't lose that philosophy actually in the brand. Yeah.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah. Going back to Constant Force now. This perhaps is the most geekiest, nerdiest podcast we've ever done on movements. Would you agree, Long? Like, we've never done like this. But there are other constant force mechanisms.
I'm not the engineer, by the way. Huh? I'm not the engineer, so don't get.
Yeah, I can see you reading off like Wikipedia. Don't worry. I can see the Armin Strom Wikipedia page open. Yeah.
The website open.
Yeah.
But I have Claude on my other phone.
Claude is holding up signs in the back.
I'm sure the audience hear the pauses that you take.
Exactly.
But there are other constant force mechanisms, such as for the fusee chain and the remontoire, right? And, other brands have successfully incorporated those within their brand. Why? I mean, do you use those actually? And if not, why not? Like, why did you go with the one that you do? And I think you do resonance. You have a resonance piece though.
Yeah, but resonance has nothing to do with the constant force. So, but if we talk about constant force and fusee chain or remontoire, I think it's called the gravity equal force. This model belongs to the collection of the System 78 collection. But what we do there is to make independent watchmaking accessible to a broader audience. So the price point of a gravity equal force with this constant force mechanism is extremely interesting. And when you compare it to a fusee chain or a remontoire, where we easily talk about 50,000 plus, our system, how we could make it retails for about 16,000, 17,000 Swiss francs. And at the end has the same effect. So that's why actually fusee chain, I'm a big fan. It's fascinating, but it is very time consuming and to make it to act at the end to have the same effect like we have in a quite simple system we integrated in our barrel, which has the same effect at the end. That's why it's an innovation.
I got to say, fusee chain aesthetically looks pretty cool, right?
It is cool.
It is. The problem with the fusee chain is that it makes the watch pretty big, right?
It's also big. It needs some space.
And I love actually the tactile feeling on a Fusee chain when you wind it. It's a different kind of feeling to a manual wind watch. So I think it has got some, whether it's worth 50K plus, some would argue it is. And then with the remontoire, Grofeld have, famously, got their remontoire in it. There is an aesthetics. They've managed to have that thing where you can see it's a remontoire. Right. I would say, I don't know, Long, if you agree. A lot of people see the Gronefeld, right? And it has the remontoire there. But I don't know how many people actually know what remontoire is, right? Like,
I think they do.
They know it's that piece. They know it looks great. Yeah. The movement on the Gronefeld, the way it's finished, the sandblasted with the shiny edges. Obviously, that's very aesthetic as well. I wonder how many people actually buy those things knowing what the remontoire is.
Yeah. Why we had such a big hype of tourbillons a couple of years ago. I mean, tourbillons is just something for me still very beautifully aesthetically to look at. Most of the tourbillons, people buying tourbillons, they don't know exactly what's actually happening within the tourbillon, but it, as you just said, with the remontoire or Fusee chain, it looks cool. It really looks cool. I agree. Yeah.
Right. My next question is still on constant force, but mainly, you coming from a marketing background, we've just spent a good session talking about constant force. Plus the fact that we did also mention remontoire, Fusee chain, you get to see something most of the time, a difference in the movement. But how much of the way you do constant force is seen? And therefore, how hard is it to communicate that to the end consumer?
In our watch, we do have an opening within the barrel. So we show the barrel from the front side. And the innovation with this Geneva cross integrated in the barrel, so it's visible from the front side as well. So when you wind it's an automatic watch, but also when you wind it manually, you see the opening moving, and you actually see the Geneva cross moving as well within the barrel.
Okay, and how do you, like, let's say on social media, how do you even talk about constant force? Is it just literally just showing the pictures of the barrel and then trying to write a caption about it?
Yeah, we did. I think there's a video also, so where we show the barrel, opening the barrel, and then three-dimensionally you can dive into the barrel, so to really explain also what's happening. Yeah.
Okay, right. There's a belief, that the independents do a lot of their things in-house. Is this actually true? Because as a small company, surely that must be hard to have everything underneath one roof. Compared to, well, I mean, even large conglomerates, man, they bought brands just to become in-house, right? I mean, like, how much of what you do is in-house?
So how much at Arminstrom is in-house?
Yes.
That's the question.
Yes.
When it comes to the movement, about 98%. So we really have the design department, the engineering department, the whole construction department, 3 people, Claude, co-founder, +2, working in that department. Then we have all the machining, CNC machines. We do our screws in-house, we do the main plates in-house. So the production is really, really in-house. What we don't do are all the spring parts. But other than this, when it comes to the movement, it's pretty much everything is in-house. Yeah. I think we go a bit too far, to be honest, but it's just because we can do it, we are doing it. Yeah, we're not doing the cases so far, so cases are outsourced. But who knows? Might be the next step.
Well, some of the pieces that you guys make, I think a lot of them are quite big, right? Like to wear. How do you balance the design of the watch where you want to exercise your technical prowess, but then, where it impacts on the wearability of the piece? Because I think you've got I can't remember the name of the model, but it's pretty, I think it's the GMT.
I think you're talking about the resonant one, right?
I'm not sure it's it's a GMT, but it's like oval shaped.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I mean, it's more a piece of art.
Yeah.
Than really a watch. Of course, actually at the wrist it feels quite comfortable, but it is a big watch. I agree. we have 2 time zones, but we have 4 barrels, so it's a double barrel watch.
Wow, 4 barrels.
With 4 barrels running 2 independent movements in one watch. The sole connection is that patent the clutch spring to reach the resonance effect, synchronization. It is a big piece, I agree, but it's aesthetically to look at, it's really, really fascinating, I think. Yeah.
There's no doubt when you look at your pieces, the aesthetics and the finishing is very, very good. Yeah.
I think with some pieces, like even say like MBNF, the Bulldog, I don't think people buy it and think, oh, is this practical? Like you buy it just purely like it's an art piece and you wear it knowing that it's not practical, but it's just so nice. It's okay. You know, it makes up for it. Yeah.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes me think then, Serge, if you see it as an art piece, more of an art piece, is that more of a marketing piece to show your prowess?
The double barrel watch, actually, the dual time watch, actually, a little bit it is, yes, because when our first resonance was in 2016 when we launched it. So to explain what's happening within resonance was quite difficult. With the dual time resonance, where we can say there's 2 movements in one watch because there's 2 time indications, 24 indications, 2 power reserve indication, it was easier to us also to explain actually what's happening within resonance, within the synchronization of 2 movements. And so it was also a bit of a talking piece for us. Yes, that's true.
Right. My last question of the main interview here, I'm sure you're so happy about this, is as CEO, what are the most key pressing issues that you want to address at Arminstrom in the near future?
But what we do at Arminstrom, it's a bit the philosophy of myself and the whole team is really to represent a fusion of Swiss-German watchmaking and the transparent mechanics. And of course, with what I said, with the commitment to innovations as well. I think we are proud to be in the German part. I think you can also tell by the design language. Swiss-German watchmaking stands definitely for high quality, and the transparent mechanic, which is the history of Arminstrom, and the innovations we are releasing. You can see it, I think, by all the latest releases. There is at least one or more innovation by every watch.
Okay, right. As that was the last question now, right, of the main interview, you can somewhat turn the gun at us now and ask us questions. So yeah, you've prepared 3 questions for us, and we go into the reverso round. So please shoot.
Great. Okay. So we have actually we also at Arminstrom we launched a ladies watch. A bit. It's called the Lady Beat, exactly. A bit more than a year ago, and we realized that the design of it also is also appealing to men.
Yeah.
So general question: what do you think is the future of ladies' watches?
I swear to God, the whole of like 2021, so we're coming to the end of 2021. It's the one watch that I've been dying to see, actually. Just because I think, and I always say this, I think it's really rare for a brand to get a female watch design right. And my kind of like gauge for it is, if the design is good, there's a high chance men will be envious of it. Like men will think, hey, that's really nice, but too bad it's in the female category, right? So this is one of them. And I always say the AP female concept was another one that was done well. But this one, when I saw the pictures, I was like, it's just amazing. Like, this is the way it should be done, when it feels very effortless, even though I know a lot of people will be like, no, it's a color, it's white, it's like, there's something about the way it's done. It looks classy. It doesn't look like you guys tried to make a female. I think the only thing that you did that made it female was like you called it Lady Beat, but nothing about it even screams oh, this is really forced and we try and put it into female category. It was just done really, really well. Like, so I'm just dying to see it in real life, honestly. So I've only
Thank
seen,
you.
yeah, I've only seen pictures of the gravity. And so I'm just very, very curious. I've gone online, I looked at all the pictures, but I always feel like pictures in real life is just, it's just, yeah, you just got to see it in real life to be really like, you know, yeah, to really feel it. So back to your question, the future, I actually think that more and more like the like what defines a female watch and a male watch is disappearing.
Yeah.
I have never been someone that's been against like oh, like why are you doing this to female watches, like why are you doing this to male watches. Like I just think the industry is the way it is. I respect that there's so much history and that yeah, men dominate this industry. It's okay for me. I just think that you just got to find a piece that works for you, whether it's a male like a piece for men or women, it doesn't really matter, right? But I do think like you said, like these pieces like Lady Beat, the AP female concept, when you put out pieces like that, like as a woman inside, there's like 1% of me that goes, yes, like the female piece is nicer than the men's piece. Like it just feels good. It's like, yeah, there are a lot of brands who are making a lot of progress, I have to say. Yeah. So
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree that yeah, the demarcation between men and it's becoming more unisex.
Yeah.
And yeah, if watches appeal to both sexes, I'm sure it's a win-win situation for the brand. Because I think although there are certain things that women gravitate to, such as frosted in ladies' pieces, some men still actually like frosted, by the way. They still have it in the 41 for AP. So I think it should be interchangeable. So it's interesting, even like you calling it a lady beat, because then a lot of guys will not consider that just because of the name, right? Like, is it that you specifically, you know, we want to target ladies? Because a lot of men maybe would consider wearing that, right? But they can't deal with the fact that their male ego can't deal with the fact that it's called the lady beat. So as soon as they wear it, they goes, "What watch is that? It's called the lady beat."
Yeah. No, we really wanted to make a ladies' watch, and our design team, we have 3 men actually working on the design team. So we had 2 women joining the team just for the design process, with the clear goal to keep the Armin Strom DNA. With one side of the watch, you have this mechanics. You see the balance wheel. That's why we call it the beat. And then on the other side of the watch, you have this very feminine theme where we call it the full moon and the half moon. So the dial is actually the full moon, and then the other dial part is the half moon. But yes, as I said before, it works on the men's wrist definitely 100%. That's also with 39 millimeters, not a small ladies watches.
Yeah.
Your second question, Serge.
No, let me see my second question. Yeah, we talked about the independent watchmaking, and why do you think is independent watchmaking hype at the moment? And it is hype. I think we feel it. I think a lot of brands, colleagues, they feel it. So do you think, is there a particular reason why?
Can I just clarify your question? When you say hype, I always assume hype means something that comes up but then goes down. Do you actually see it going down? Is that the question? Like up and coming, or just the interest? You mean?
We see a lot of higher interest in general in independent brands, also from actually collectors that just bought well-known brands.
Yeah, I'll go first because I got my answer ready. So I think it's a multifactorial answer. I think that from the mainstream brands that everybody wants, your Rolexes, your APs, your Richard Milles, your Pateks, simply, you just can't get the pieces anymore, right? You can't get a lot of the pieces that you want. And as a newcomer, I mean, even if you bought Patek previously, it's still difficult. As a newcomer, forget it, right? You just ain't going to get those pieces. which naturally mean people will then gravitate to other things, right? And then but they still want quality. Okay, so independents definitely give you a higher quality, but then they're quite comfortable going for niche brands because they also aware the hype that's been within the mainstream brands is not something that they want to associate themselves with, right? Because so many main people are going in that, not necessarily for the, well, I don't want to say for the right reasons, but for maybe not reasons that resonate with a collector, a connoisseur level that buys Arminstrom, right? And so when you factor in those things together, it makes the independents a highly attractive proposition. Especially, I would say, if you look at the independents that do well, they really have a clear DNA that when they wear that piece, it's really clear you're wearing that piece, from that brand, right? So within a niche group, people know what you're wearing, but the mainstream don't. But those people don't care if the mainstream know. So I think that's the reason. I think it's actually you're benefiting now from the hype. Because if you really think about the hype for these mainstream brands, we're talking about premium, like on the gray market, where watches are more expensive than at retail. That isn't a phenomenon that's been in the last 10 years. It's more in the last 5-6 years, right? So after that's happened now, people get tired of waiting. You know, they think they got a chance. They haven't got the chance. They get tired of waiting and they'll naturally progress to other stuff because they still want to buy nice watches. So that's what I think. How about you, Lana?
I have a really strange answer because it's been happening to me recently in Hong Kong. So I see two groups of people, right? There's one group that is just, I think COVID kind of like, it was like a reset for a lot of people. And they kind of like reflected on their lives and they thought, okay, I'm going to buy less, but better quality. So they started to look at independence and they started to buy smaller brands. And I guess like curate their collection a bit. But that's a very small percentage. I would say the bigger percentage of people that have like reached out to me on Instagram or just from meeting are more people looking at it from an investment point of view. So they will keep saying to me, what is the next Rich Mill? Like, what is undervalued? Is this going to die like Frank Mueller? These are the kind of like comments I'm getting. So I think they're hoping that, okay, let's just use like De Bethune as an example. They're thinking, if I buy this watch early, will this watch get bought up? I mean, this watch brand get bought up and then I can ride that wave. This is what I'm seeing in Hong Kong anyways. But then again, Hong Kong's a market that where I think a lot of people look at watches as investments more than just as a hobby. Yeah. Yeah. Sad, but true. Yeah.
I agree. It is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Your last and final question. Let's say, which is the same thing, actually.
Maybe it's a bit a silly question, but we talk quite a lot about complication, constant force, also a bit of resonance. Do you think, or is there a useless complication in a watch for you? Is there any complication ever been done in a watch you think it's definitely not worth it to get it?
I know my answer. I'm going to go first.
Oh, you go first.
Okay.
Go first then.
Okay, for me, it's illogical. So a lot of things don't even matter. For example, Tourbillon to me is useless because I mean, like, seriously, does it fight gravity? Like, no, this, like, to me, it's just you're paying for like an art piece. It's just supposed to be aesthetically beautiful and it's just to show the skills, like the craftsmanship. So I'm okay with being illogical when when it comes to watches, right? But I mean, so many things don't make sense. Like, why do you need retrograde? Like, why do you even need this stuff, right? If you really want to just tell the time, you can just like, I don't know, use your iPhone. So this is just a piece of art for me. I mean, I can go on and on. I can even tell you like OpenWorks, like the AP OpenWorks, that double balance thing, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't actually improve the accuracy at all. But I'm just buying it because it's aesthetically so beautiful, like the way the dial layout and everything. Yeah. Dan?
Okay.
No, I can't really think of a complication where I would agree, because a lot of the complications people are subjectively find aesthetic, right? They lost their functional use many years ago. You could argue, I mean, come on, man, how many people use a chronograph to time things now, right?
I do. I actually do.
Yeah, your eggs. Is that it?
My eggs, my face mask, like.
Right. So aside from Lung Lung, who uses it for her eggs and face mask, just a lot of them are redundant. But I mean, if you buy a chronograph, right, what you really also must have an appreciation is for a movement of a chronograph. It's just beautiful, right? In most cases. So it's always down to the aesthetics. I think the consumer, right, even when they look at the dial, yeah, clearly that's aesthetic. When they look at the skeletonization, they think aesthetic. Enamel dials, aesthetic. When they look at the movement, right, we focused on this podcast about everything being technical engineering. But if it looks crap, people don't buy it either. I mean, the reason why you hand finish it, I know functionally it had a use, but also it just happens to be incredibly aesthetic. And also the value in hand finishing it is in the fact that it's hand finished, right? Yeah. So again, it's all aesthetics for me. Like people buy Langer. Why? Because it's the aesthetics of the movement. Do they really know how that movement works? No, they don't. Right? So yeah, that's what I think.
Okay.
Right. So now we're going to turn the heat back onto you, right, with the pump push around. Okay. So some questions. Got quite a few. I added a few, but we'll see. I might skip a few depending on how I feel. Right. So are you ready, Serge?
I am ready. Yes. Let's go.
Right. Number one, what is the task you hate to do as CEO of Arminstrom? Do podcasts or something?
No, I love podcasts actually. No, even at Arminstrom with independent brand, fully family owned, I think we have to deal and really deeply deal at least once a year with the financial numbers. And this is not my biggest pleasure, to be honest.
You should get Long Long to do it. She's well into finance. Yeah, she's actually got the two Chinese characters that mean finance in the name.
Really?
Yeah. Long Long, yeah, is actually the two Chinese words for finance.
Interesting.
Right. Number two, do you have a life outside watches? What are your other passions?
I definitely have a life outside watches.
That was not convincing at all, the way you said that.
Yeah. He's saying that as he's like doing a head slap.
Yeah.
No, I do have a life, of course. First of all, I have a family. I have two girls. But when it comes to passion, other things than watches, it's definitely wine for me. I'm a wine collector. And I also love music. I'm a part owner of one of the larger music festivals in Switzerland. So we deal every year with big music bands and groups, bringing them to Switzerland as well. Yes, so yeah.
Okay, next one. Tell us one thing you've kept from your childhood.
I kept from my childhood in terms of
anything. It could be something like a habit. It could be something material. It could be anything.
I still have all my swatches. Never sold them.
How many do you have?
I don't know. Actually, I have to count them. At least probably 50, 60, something. Yeah.
Wow. That's really interesting in the fact that your watch journey started with something perhaps the most simple watch. No, really. And now you're making some of the most complicated watches within the watch industry, right?
Yeah, but it's I mean, when you look at the watch industry, the history in Switzerland's watch played an extremely important role. With Mr. Hayek saving actually Switzerland as the country for watchmaking with when he came out with this watch and the whole system of doing movements again in Switzerland. So it's also history, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about one life-changing moment you had in your life.
I think I just said before, I have two girls, two daughters. I think when they were born, first one 10 years ago, the second one 8 years ago, definitely changed a lot of my thinking. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And what mistakes do you think you've made as CEO, or things that you could have done better in hindsight?
A couple of years ago, when I saw really Armin Strom developing very well, I had suddenly the idea of getting involved in different businesses, and didn't take enough time probably for Arminstrom. Just a period of maybe 2.5 years, and this is something I regret. It's all good again, but it really I stepped back too early. Not because I wanted, I just had the feeling of doing something else besides Arminstrom. I still kept the music business. This is really fun, but this doesn't take too much of time for myself. But I have two other things going on back then, and this was a mistake. Yeah.
Do you think, just leading on for that as it was doing well, did you think that you fell into the trap of complacency?
Sorry, I didn't.
Do you feel like you fell out into the trap of complacency?
Maybe, yes. It's just, I mean, when you start, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So somehow when you see something going well, you try to maybe put something in place, but it's something now I won't ever do, because it's really 100% passion for Arminstrom. But then you see another opportunity and you try to do something else. I think it's more the family background I have, being entrepreneurs, to see opportunities, to get the opportunities, and yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Tell us one cultural behavior or trait that we have in Asia that as a Swiss national, you have trouble understanding or adopting.
I actually just learned, I don't know if it's just a Chinese thing or if it's an Asian thing generally. I just learned this a couple of months ago in Vancouver, when I had a collector dinner with a couple of Chinese collectors, and we had a good, also wine collector, so we drank very good wine. So when when you click glasses,
Oh, yeah.
so you have to try to be lower than your counterpart.
Oh, yeah.
I find that so,
Is that,
yeah, because I was like, what is going on? I was like, why is everyone behaving like this? Like, I was shocked. Yeah.
So it's only Chinese. Is it only Chinese, or?
It's a very Chinese thing.
Is it just Chinese? Do they do it in Japan? I'm not sure. Did they do it in Japan? Do you know?
No,
I've never heard of this.
How in Taiwan? Do they do it in Taiwan?
No, that's why I was really surprised when I went to China. I was like, why is everyone like, I'm just trying to go lower, and then I'm like, what is going on here?
No, really, it was almost hilarious. And we as Swiss, for us, it's very important that when you click the glasses, that you look your counterpart in the eyes. And they were just focusing on get lower and lower into the glasses. What is happening?
Yeah. I mean, that's the reason why I'm so short, actually. But do you actually understand why, Serge?
Yeah, what I learned is actually giving a bit of respect to your to the one next to you, that you actually see yourself a bit lower than him or her.
You know, honestly, this whole drinking thing in China, like, one is what you just said about the glasses, and then it's like doing the right order, like going right in the right direction, then coming back. And every time you do in England, like, or in the West, you just go cheers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But then you like have to say this blooming speech every time, like in China, like, man, I just want to drink. And every time you drink, you're getting more drunk, and you literally don't know what to say, because some guy's taking what you wanted to say. Like, do you know what I mean, Long? Like, you always say this like very 客气话, right? Very polite things, but then there's only a limited amount of polite ways to say it, and then you think, oh, damn it, you just took it.
Yeah.
Right. Next one. What's the first thing you do when you wake up, and the last thing you do before you go to bed?
I should actually say, I wake up my daughters and kiss them good night at night. It's actually some I do it, yes, but to be completely honest, to doing some nonsense on the phone. It's just probably what we all do. We just take the phone and push some things, go through websites, and yeah, unfortunately it is. Yeah.
Okay. Right. One dirty secret within the Swiss watch industry.
We talked a bit about this before when we talked about the aftermarket prices. We know that it's sometimes, not of course not always, but sometimes it's fake. That brands try to put their own pieces to the to auctions and buy them back themselves, and this is something I find it's really stupid to somehow manipulate the market. It's fake, it's unreal, and this is something it really bothers me, to be honest. Yeah. I would never do it. But
do you think it works?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it does work. Yeah, I think it does work. It's not. I think it's not even a industry secret. At least the industry that we're talking about.
I don't think it's a collector secret.
It's not even a collector secret. So that's why it works. Yeah? So even the collector know it, and they still buy. So it works. Yeah. I don't know for the long run. But
it's psychological, isn't it? Like you think it's worth more and more valuable, and then like some people know, but unfortunately probably 90%, 95% don't know. I think it always, the way I've seen it, and I don't know about you, Long, because you know we do know a lot of people that buy at auction, and an auction crowd is a particular crowd, isn't it? It's not wholly, it doesn't represent the whole watch collector market. It's a very specific part. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Right.
But at the end, it influences the whole. I mean, even if you go to a shop and you want to get a new piece, it's affected by the image of having pieces very high price from the same collection, or at least from the same brand. But
so what you're actually saying is, if Armin Strom goes for a really strong price at the auction, you had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
No. Maybe you. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you pay me to do it, so it's got nothing to do with you. Right. Name another watch brand, not your own, that you admire.
Couple of brands. Just lately within the independents, I really love what Urwerk is doing. Just in terms of being very different, being something completely different, more a piece of art for the wrist, but still tells the time, and two great guys as well behind the brand. And MBNF also in terms of what he's done, his whole history starting from the scratch to bring the brand where it is today, and also aesthetically I really love the pieces, some of his pieces I really love. When it comes to independence and more of the larger brands, there's a couple of brands, of course. The history of Patek Philippe is incredible. AP, I love some of the APs. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Right. As an entrepreneur, yeah, it'd be interesting to see your answer to the next question. A person you look up to, not within the watch industry, and why?
It's my father. It's really my father. He grew up extremely simple. He had to work at home very much, so he couldn't even do a proper education himself. And today he's a doctor in economics. So he really made his way from the scratch, and not an easy life as a child to where he is today. So he really. I think I also learn a lot from him still. Yeah, it's definitely my father.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
From my father?
Yeah, from your father or from anyone.
Do whatever you like. I think follow your passion. I think it's not just a saying. I think it's something really we need to do, not only in the business, also in the private life. I think at the end it's a work-life balance, and when you follow your dream or your passion, then you're more happy, And if you're more happy, I think you also work better, and it's more fun, and you probably even get older when you're happy. So, yeah.
Well, I actually think that was a great answer and a great way to round off this interview with you, Serge. And did you enjoy it?
Very much, yes, very much.
Yeah.
Was
it actually the best podcast you've ever done?
It was probably the longest and the best. Yes, no, it was the best. It was the best. Usually it's just one, and so it's great to be the three of us. Great to meet both of you. It was a big pleasure. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I hope to see you soon, either in Switzerland, Shanghai, or Hong Kong. If you guys listening want to know more about Arminstrom, you can find them on obviously their website, or you can reach out to them on their IG account. And if you also enjoyed this episode, do us a big favor and leave a glowing review on whichever platform you're listening on, and make sure you subscribe. You can also follow us on IG at The Waiting List Podcast. We will see you on the next one. Thank you, Serge, again, and bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
As always, thank you for listening to the Waiting List Podcast.
We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. And if you have any questions,
comments,
or feedback,
feel free to reach out to us at The Waiting List Podcast on Instagram or via our private accounts.
We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.